Hi, my name is Ted Pantone. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Turaco. We are an InsurTech operating in Africa, and our vision is to insure 1 billion people.
Welcome to the InsurTech Business Series podcast. I am Fulumi.
And I am Gamola. And together, we host the most exciting podcast on insurance and InsurTech related topics in Africa. Stay tuned.
Hello, Ted. Thank you once again for coming on to our podcast. It's been a long time coming. We've been wanting to have you on our podcast ever since the Bimala Ambassador program, especially with what Turaco has been doing in Kenya, coming down to Nigeria, and also for Uganda. So before we delve into everything about Turaco and the InsurTech industry and insurance generally, who's Ted?
Thank you, Fulumi, for having me. Really great to be here connecting with you guys. Obviously, big fans of the insurance space in Nigeria, and I love what you guys are doing to kind of share the message. So yeah, happy to share our story a little bit. I'm not that interesting, but I'll share a little bit about my story. So I grew up in California and spent formative years of my life there. After going to university is really when I started exploring the idea of doing business in Africa and working in this part of the world. I took a job kind of thinking that I would come for a year and do work with this Gates Foundation project before getting an MBA and moving on with the rest of my life in the States. But I actually ended up staying and really just falling in love with East Africa and the places that I got to live and friends that I made and opportunities to do business here. So I stayed, and that was, I think, about 14 years ago. So yeah, I've been doing business on the continent in various ways. Obviously, I moved out of the nonprofit space pretty quickly, and there's a whole story there that I won't bore you with. But yeah, I've been doing business for 14 years in East Africa and a little bit in West Africa. And yeah, I'm here because I love it. Right, my kids were born here. I live in Nairobi, Kenya. We just have a kind of deep heart and love for life in this part of the world. Every time I go back to the States, it's not going home for me anymore. It's going to a foreign land that things work in weird ways. And I'm always happy to come back home to Kenya where we live. So that's a little bit about me. I mean, the kind of motivations for why I do what I do, and some of the journey has been mixed with all sorts of things. I have a lot of motivation for my faith and my Christian faith in terms of trying to build businesses that help people and like the core of what they do. But I'm also just a businessman, and I'm motivated by making money and want to build that are impactful in every way that you can define that term. Yeah, and I've really enjoyed this last season of building Turaco with our team. Can get into the story of how we came to be a little bit more, but yeah, that's a little bit about Ted. I guess the only thing I didn't mention is I'm happily married man with 4 kids and a lot going on.
All born here. All born in Africa?
Two were born in Uganda, 2 were born in the US, kind of in between business ventures that I had. But as soon as the last one was born, we moved right back to Kenya because it's far more fun living in this part of the world. So,
I mean, Africa is one place to fall in love with, and it's interesting to see that you found you found, East Africa as your home. That's an interesting story. We don't hear that every day, do we, Damola?
No, we don't. So when you spoke about your work with the non-profit organizations that you worked with at the time, was this around protection? Was it around insurance? Because I know that Richard Lefley, I know he also had a similar journey and also pioneered this conversation around micro insurance.
Yeah, it wasn't around protection per se. So the projects that I was working on were with an organization called JPAL, which is a research organization out of MIT and Harvard and Yale, and they study what works and what doesn't work in kind of development economics. I thought I wanted to be an economist at the time, so I was working with these economists trying to figure out, okay, what works, what doesn't work, in terms of the interventions that the West tries to come up with to help people here. Lots of bad things in the statement that I just made, but that's where my career over here started, was working with them and studying that. And it was a project that was funded by Gates Foundation to actually study what was most effective in water sanitation. So really interesting work there and impactful. We helped to provide safe water to hundreds of thousands of people in Kenya and Bangladesh. But no, it wasn't related to risk. I don't have an insurance background in any way. I'm just a guy that likes to build things, and I love finding problems that need to be solved and helping to solve them. So, my business experiences ranges from starting a microfinance bank to having a Pizza Hut franchise and many different kinds of investment in between. My journey into insurance actually started with Richard Lefley's company.
Wow.
Yeah, I was hired to help run an innovation lab that he had started internally at MicroInsure. After about a year, I had a pretty clear vision about what I thought MicroInsure needed to do, and it was a little bit of a different vision than what their board or Richard had. So yeah, I decided to branch off and see if I could solve it outside of that organization.
Awesome. That's quite an interesting journey. In terms of doing all of this research and, working with this group of people, did you then come to realization that what people want on the African continent in terms of insurance or, in terms of financial solutions are entirely different from, what has been provided in the Western world? Was that, what you were able to put together to then form Turaco?
I had two aha moments regarding insurance for people in Africa. The first was the very first time I heard about microinsurance, which was when someone was trying to hire me into this job at MicroInsure. And the aha moment was, of course, people want to buy this. Like I've been the insurance policy for so many friends in Kenya and Uganda over the years that I lived in both those places. And it was just very obvious to me that like having a wealthy friend is not a scalable solution to the problem, right? Like there needs to be insurance products designed and delivered appropriately for consumers in these markets. And I lived in rural Western Kenya, right? So I lived in Busia, I lived in Kisumu, in a city in Western Kenya, and spent a ton of time in rural parts of Uganda working with small business owners. And I just intrinsically believed that the products to help manage the risks that people faced would work, would be successful. Like people would be willing to pay the money that it would take to protect themselves against these risks and kind of pool resources to smooth the risks across communities. So yeah, that was my first aha moment, was just as soon as I heard about the concept of like mass market microinsurance, I was like, this is going to work. I want to be a part of this. I want to insure 1 billion people in my life. Let's go. So I woke up the next day with that vision in my head, and went to work with MicroInsure to try and solve it. I think the second aha moment I had was in seeing on the ground some of the work that MicroInsure had done in terms of really simply simplifying the products in a way that made sense for mass market consumers. And they had a project in Ghana and doing kind of outbound call center sales. And I remember the moment where I sat down with these call center agents that were doing these sales, and I just talked to them about their experience, and they were sharing that more than 40% of people they got on the phone were happy to buy the insurance product that they were selling. And my mind was blown by that number because, right, I know a lot about business. I read a lot about business. I know that when you're doing call center sales, you can't expect more than like maybe 1% conversion rate in a very, very good scenario of people that you get on the phone that will actually buy your product. So it just pointed to a few pieces of the puzzle that hadn't been totally solved yet. That I thought that at the time that, okay, if we could solve these pieces around unit economics and around kind of appropriately costing like the team to be able to execute on the opportunity, that I thought we had a really good chance of making the model work. So yeah, that's kind of some of the origin thoughts, at least around wanting to build Turaco.
You touched on something that I wanted to speak about. That's around your model, right? But before then, you made mention of the products, right? And maybe the work that MicroInsure had done at the time. Yes, what exists in the market is different from what customers need. At least that's what I have seen from my experience. What are kind of like the ingredients from your experience that needs to be in place for this kind of initiatives or projects to work?
Well, I think it's very obvious, actually. You need to have products that are simple enough that someone that's never bought insurance before can understand them in a 2-minute phone call. And that's going to look different based upon what product you're trying to sell and maybe the income level of the person that you're trying to sell it, right? So the product will change, but the core issue is you just need to simplify it a lot more than what standard insurance typically chooses to do. I mean, I'm now an insurance expert, right? Like I've been in the insurance space for 6 years. I've got people that come to me that ask about buying insurance policies in Australia. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I know how to do that. I'm sure I can help you. But anyways, relatively, I'm an insurance expert, having built this business for the time that we have. And even I sometimes get confused by the like base terms and conditions that insurance companies try to put into the policy wordings of what they're selling. Right. When I go to buy insurance for my car, comprehensive insurance for my car, or a medical insurance that could cover me internationally because I'm traveling around a lot, right? The exclusions, the different ways that they word things about amount of cover. And I think the insurance industry has at its core been built around confusion and not customer centricity, right? Not having the voice of their customer in their minds at all time, designing products and when they're trying to communicate those products to customers. And it's fascinating to me because I look at this and this is not just an Africa problem, right? This is the same problem everywhere, and just different flavors of the same problem. I think having simple products that people can understand is more necessary here because people have never bought insurance all in many of the instances where we're selling. But I think it's a truism across the board. I theorize with my investors around the insurance industry, and one of the things that I'll regularly say is that I feel like it's an industry in need of redemption. The core product that an insurance company is supposed to deliver is claims value, right? Like money paid out in claims, right? Mm-hmm. That's what you're buying when you're buying insurance policy, is that they're going to pay you claims. But the way that an insurance company refers to claims and like that core product delivery is they call it a loss, right? They call it losses. So like if your core product is in your head psychologically a loss to your business, I think you just are going to have a anti-customer centric mindset. And fortunately with Turaco, we're able to build something that has a different starting point, right? We're still in the business to make money. So I still want to make sure that we're paying out 2x what we're bringing in, but we at least get to change some of that kind of customer-centric mindset that I think is really broken in the industry as a whole.
Yeah, I think you make a valid point, right? And I believe that InsurTech can help the industry to be more customer-centric, right? And so that's why I'm happy to see a lot of incumbents from the Nigerian perspective, for example, open to partnerships with startups, digital partnerships, not just, we are distributing through brokers and agents, but then how can we think differently about distribution? Just to follow up to your point around simple product, how do you do this? Because you are dealing with an industry that has sold these same products that are off the shelf today for hundreds of years. So how do you actually do it? Perhaps maybe you can also link that to Turaco's business model as well. How do you get those simple products, working with insurers who are not used to this kind of conversation?
Well, I think the first thing is knowing what you want to sell. So you have to know your customer. You have to actually know who your customer is, understand what would make sense for them to be able to buy. And then you have to then go and translate that into the language of insurance companies, right? Which is not the language of customers, but a language that we've learned how to speak as the company. And then you have to find really good partners, right? So we work with some amazing insurance companies who some of them are doing like mass market insurance for the first time, or at least in a significant way for the first time. And it's just a negotiation, right? You have to explain to them the opportunity, explain to them what you're trying to do, and then work with them to design products that their underwriting teams are going to be willing to test out and then launch those products in the market. And I think the beauty of being a startup is we're nimble, right? We're iterative by nature. So it means that even though sometimes we'll launch a product and the product economics don't work over time, we're able to pivot that product in the market or pivot the way that we're positioning it in such a way that we can make the economics work. So, without giving you kind of all the secret sauce, that's kind of that's right, Cher, is like really know your customers and then work with great partners, right? There's plenty of insurance companies that we've spoken to that we've ended up not working with because we think they're either not really willing to innovate enough, or they're just trying to like get our information and then go and steal business from us. So working with partners that are really values aligned and trying to build the same thing that we're trying to build has been imperative and critical for what we're trying to do.
Hi, I'm Marjorie Gwenia. I'm a coach, author, and non-executive director. I hope you enjoy listening to these podcasts, and I encourage you to follow the InsurTech Business Series for very interesting and up-to-date industry information.
Okay, yeah, great. Looking at Turaco, right? Even the name Turaco, I mean, I wanted to ask, how did that come about, right? Because I know Turaco is a bird. So can you tell us how you arrived at that name? I mean, how that is connected to, what you do today?
Well, first off, it's my favorite bird, so we can start there.
Right.
And when we were thinking about a name for our company, we were trying to come up with something that was not your typical kind of insurance acronym or something that would be a bit far-fetched to try and actually understand.
Yeah.
When we were thinking about Turaco as a potential name and doing research about it, we learned that the Turaco nickname is like the go away bird because it always lets everybody else know of the presence of predators. It has a loud noise and it shouts really loud if there's a predator nearby. And so we just love that kind of mentality of trying to let everybody know of the presence of risk and helping protect the other birds in the forest from from the risks that they might face in life. So yeah, that's how we landed on the name. We also just like it because it's a beautiful bird, and we love its colors, and we love that it makes people smile when they see it.
I think we're particularly drawn to the colors.
Definitely.
Okay. I think that apart from, the beautiful name, which is Turaco, and it's, quite an unusual name. I know that for the Bima Lab, one of the reasons why Turaco was part of that was, to also gain access to not just the Nigerian market, but also to gain access to the regulatory landscape. How has been your experience so far? And then how has that, translated to the overall growth of Turaco? And has there been like a difference in your model in terms of how you are able to administer insurance in Kenya, Uganda, and then how you then have to administer that in Nigeria, judging by the fact that while we are all Africans, there's just a bit of difference in our reception to insurance itself.
Yeah, we've had a great experience in Nigeria with NICOM. They've been very supportive and collaborative about what we're trying to do. So yeah, only good things to say about our experience in Nigeria from a regulatory standpoint. I mean, the regulations are a bit different than Kenya and Uganda, so we've had to contextualize our way of doing business to make it work in the Nigerian context. But so far, it's been a fantastic relationship with the regulator, and the business itself is doing really well. I mean, we're tens of thousands of people insured after what's really just our first year of operation there, and kind of on a pathway to get to hundreds of thousands of people insured in the next 12 months through some different partnerships that we have in process there. So yeah, I think it's always interesting to me talking to different startups about their approach to regulation and whether they're trying to just hide and not get noticed, or whether they're trying to go through the back door. And we've just found that it makes a lot more sense to go through the front door, to talk to the regulator, to have a very good understanding of what they are wanting to see happen in their market, and really treating them as a partner rather than as a governing body, because it's run by people, and those people have motivations, and those people have metrics and targets to hit. So I think if you can align yourself with what the regulator is trying to accomplish, then you're going to have a really good working relationship.
I think that makes sense. And being a part of Bima Lab ourselves in terms of supporting that project in Nigeria, it was very interesting to see even the regulator themselves coming out to be a part of innovation, supporting innovation. I know that the Kenyan regulator perhaps maybe is a bit ahead of the Nigerian regulator in this regard, right? But having
a Nigerian admit that Kenya is ahead of Nigeria is very strange to me. So I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah, but it's interesting, and one of the things that we are happy to see is that there's that interest to see innovation as a driver for the growth of insurance in Nigeria, right? There's that intention from the regulator here in Nigeria, and we're happy to see that. Bima Lab was one. We're seeing a web aggregator license. They are learning about what InsurTech is. They're having engagements with key players within the space. So that is a good one, right? But yeah, that doesn't take out the fact that regulation definitely, beyond just even InsurTech, fintech and likes, regulation is usually one of the challenges. But beyond regulation, from a Turaco point of view, what are some of like the challenges to scaling Turaco? What are some of the challenges that you faced from when you started, in 2019, I believe, till date, moving from, working in one country to 3 countries today? What are some of those challenges that you faced, and how perhaps did you overcome them, or are you overcoming them?
I think there's always going to be challenges as you scale, for sure, as you rightly point out. It's funny, I really thought we would have had more challenges around team and culture and all these things as we scaled into 3 markets, but we actually just haven't had a lot of we certainly haven't had issues or things that I would point to as challenges, right? We've been very intentional about making sure that we're hiring the right people and then bring them into the team and the culture in the right ways. And I think that's paid dividends in our ability to have a strong culture and work well with people. So something that I probably expected to be a challenge has really not been. And I think that's, I praise all of my team members for their collaborative nature and just carrying through what we're trying to accomplish together. I guess the one challenge I'll point to is just partnerships are hard when you're an intermediary, right? When you're stepping in between an insurance company and a distribution partner and then an end user, right? You're just one piece of the equation, and you have to act as a statesman, right? In terms of a company, to try and get all of those different parties to align on what they're trying to do. And we've done that well in some circumstances, and we've done it poorly in others, and learned a lot of lessons about how to build partnerships well. So that's probably the thing that I would say we've overcome the most and are still in the process of overcoming, and will probably continue to overcome.
That's interesting. And I was going to ask about people and culture and how you're able to weave these two things in your journey to growth and scaling. And it was interesting to hear your thoughts, that has not been a challenge. So for people building today, right, entering into the InsurTech space, where, for example, people, culture is a challenge, or they're also thinking that might be a challenge, how should they approach it, or what should they have in place, or what's the mindset that should be there? Because yes, Turaco is doing amazing things, but just like you said about the regulator, there are human beings behind the NICOM name. So
definitely,
what should be in place? What would you be advising the innovators coming to this space?
Nothing I'm going to say is novel, like new advice, but the things that we've really lived well have been, first and foremost, just not being lazy about culture, right? Culture will form one way or the other. So if you're lazy about it or unintentional, it will form in ways that you may not want. And you see this with lots of startups in the world that have bad cultures that you can name a long list. Yeah, just choose what you want as a culture. And a lot of it comes down to who are your first hires and what kind of person are you as a founder, and what kind of a business priorities do you want to have in place. So yeah, be intentional about choosing it, and be intentional about continuing to talk about it regularly are probably the two most important things around culture, because it will change as you grow. I mean, we're 180 people now. We're at a very different stage of our business than we were when we first wrote down what we wanted our culture to be when there were 4 of us. And now we're continuing to refine it and making sure that it's appropriate for on paper and then in practice for what we want our business to be. I think the other key thing that I heard many, many times from other founders that we have implemented well is just being really selective about who you hire, just hiring slow, making sure that you, particularly if it's going to be a more senior person, that you've spent a lot of time with them and had them do some kind of consulting projects to see are they really going to work well with you, both in terms of their output and the cultural fit. So those are probably the two things that I would point to, is just be intentional and make sure that you're hiring the right folks.
Talking about being intentional, I would like to see how this has translated as well to partnerships. So again, of course, we know that Turaco partners with incumbents in the different countries that you operate. So how have you been able to identify, the most suited partners for this journey? Coming into Nigeria as well, I'm sure that there must have been a lot of noise about who is the best or like the top performing insurance companies that you're expected to partner with to support your business model. So how have you been able to manage that as well in terms of getting and partnering with the right insurance company or getting the right partners?
I think a lot of it's come down to reputation for us. So, and I'll talk about reputation in 2 ways. both the reputation that we have as Turaco and the reputation that the insurance company has as their own entity, right? So first off, to even have a good conversation with an insurance company, you have to have a good reputation, right? You have to get some kind of a warm introduction to that business. You can't just cold call an insurance company, expect them to go into business with you to do mass market insurance, right? That there's no way that's going to happen. So we were really intentional around making sure that we have done business well and above board, and making our insurance partners make money, right? Like all the things that you would want if you were one of them, right? My faith drives a lot of these things, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you is like a driving principle. Love your neighbor as yourself. So we're very much trying to treat our insurance partners as we would want to be treated. Even though there are moments where we could probably squeeze more profit out of a relationship, like you really want to honor those partnerships because reputation is so important. So that's one side, I would say. And then on the other side, I would point to reputation of the insurance company that we're working with. And you just don't want to work with bad players because of that same issue, right? If you're working with a company that's notorious for not paying claims or notorious for doing very shady deals, then you're going to build a reputation aligned to that way of doing business. And that's very much not what we want at Turaco. So the companies that we've been fortunate enough to work with are well regarded, and we've been doing business in a well regarded way. So we've managed to maintain those relationships, in very healthy ways.
I mean, like you said, intentionality really, really matters, and also reputation that you've also mentioned. We're starting to see like a bit of acceptance, especially again from a region where a lot of people have trust issues when it comes to insurance. So speaking about partner could either make or mar that perception about the reputation of a company. Say for instance like Turaco. So yes, I totally agree with you with intentionality and also for the reputation. I think before we let you go, we'd just like to ask one final question. What should we be expecting next from Turaco? And for other people who are trying to navigate the space, that's the InsurTech space, what should they also do? So these are again, 2-part questions.
I was just looking through and I see you have insured about 200K lives, paid about 4,000 claims. You're present in 3 markets. So what next?
There's more to come. I can't really talk about it, but I can definitely say there's more to come. So keep an eye on us. One anecdote I can give you is that in the last 3 months, we've insured a new 350,000 people.
Wow.
So we're growing very fast, and have a lot of expansion plans in the markets where we're currently operating, and then in new markets as well. So very exciting times for Turaco. In terms of what advice I would give to other insurtechs, I really will go back to this point of being customer centric. I guess I'll share 2 things. Be customer centric. Don't just think that whatever every other insurance company does is going to work. If you take a couple zeros off the end of it, you have to really think about the customer's perspective. And then the other thing I would say is insurance can be a really shady business, right? It's very normal for there to be commissions and kickbacks in this industry. And if you want to have a good reputation, and if you want to help kind of rewrite the way that insurance is done for kind of mass market consumer value, I would just say to stay away from those things, because there's other ways to operate. You don't need to do that.
Great. Wise words. Thank you very much. For those who are looking to connect with you, to collaborate, to partner, who want to work with Turaco, I mean, your journey to insuring 1 billion people, how can they do that?
Yeah, please just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll respond as quickly as possible. Always happy to explore a potential partnership. Though not going to lie, I'm not going to help my competitors do well in business, but always willing to explore potential partnerships.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ted. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for sharing as much as you did. Happy to hear the amazing things that you are pushing with Turaco. Amazing stuff from you and the team there, and well done.
Thank you very much, Ted.
Thank you so much. Really grateful to be with you guys, and blessings on your journey.
Hi, and I hope you did enjoy that conversation. Quite interesting one. Do ensure that you continue to listen to our podcast and share as well with your colleagues and friends future episodes and even previous ones on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, on every platform that you get your podcasts.
Right, and also don't forget to join the conversation on all of our social media platforms. We might have comments, reviews, as well as questions. Please do share on our LinkedIn page, on our Twitter page, as well as remember to follow us.